new door. Much better than the old one. Welcome back. It is finally time to assemble my Can-Am Renegade. We're going to jump on that project in just a second. First, I want to give a shout out to my tire sponsor, GBC Tires. Really came through for me. I literally ordered these just a few days ago. They're already here. And now, with no further wait, it's time for the big reveal. More orange. That's right, we powder coated everything orange. The only thing I kept black was my corners, A-arms, trailing arms, things like that. Even went with a powder coated stem and Pro Taper bars. Literally tried to do everything. Starting with a bare frame today. I did add the skid plate and the front nose plastic plate, but other than that, it's pretty bare. The first thing I've got to do is get the motor mounts installed and a couple other odds and ends that were on the frame when every other part was taken off. So I just got to button up a couple of those accessories, those, like I said, motor mounts and things, just to get it ready, and then we're going to throw in the motor. Almost there. Alright, lower bolt to go, and this one's not easy by yourself. Now, a nice little touch I did. You matched my motor mount with the frame. Most important thing, red Loctite on everything. My back probably isn't gonna like me tomorrow, but that motor is in. All I have to do is button up some of the mounts, tighten those down, make sure we're good and snug. Then I'm gonna install the front sway bar and the rear sway bar and get going on all the corners. About to install the rear sway bar, but before I do, I'm going to go ahead and replace all the bushings, both the pivot bushings and the outer bushings where it meets up with that linkage going to your trailing arm. So we're going to get those swapped out, clean everything up, and throw it on the rear end. taking a little break to jump on camera and show you what I've completed so far. I know I haven't been talking about what's going together as it's happening. It's a lot for me to just put this machine together by myself. So I'll film it in a time lapse and stop and show you when I can. But so far we've got the engine in, obviously, the rear differential, the front differential. I had to replace the CV boot on this side, so that shaft still has to be snugged up in there a little bit. The rear subframe, kind of a bitch to get around that gas tank. I think I finally got it. I just got to snug down my nuts and apply some red Loctite to those. My next step will probably be just to get the front power steering unit in, the steering stem, handlebars mounted up, and maybe the front bumper as well with the radiator, just to help offset the weight that's now in the back with the gas tank and the differential. I'm gonna call it quits for the night. I've been at it all day and this is as far as I got. I was just finishing up the steering. I still have to do the upper A-arms and get a few things buttoned up in the front before we can make it a roller, as well as the trailing arms in the back, brakes, all that stuff still has to go on. So I'm gonna leave that for another day and call it quits for now. It's now day 3 of working on the Can-Am. I made a little bit of progress off camera. I just buttoned up, actually had Cody over helping button up the floorboards and mocking up the header pipe. We got our tires mounted, the GBC tires on the stock rims with orange rings. Those are ready to go. I've got my buddy Jason from Bibbin Sales and Service, Mario from MR Unlimited's out there. We're gonna get started. I think Jay's gonna get on the electrical, try to get that wiring harness mounted up. Mario's gonna tackle my trailing arms. I'm gonna tackle the upper A-arms and try to get some steering stuff buttoned up. Let's get to it. If we did this at Jamie's shop, he would have something that I don't have.
He has tools.
I have tools. This is a tool. I don't know what you call this, but I mean...
No. The only thing that's a tool is the person holding the camera.
I think there's 13-year-olds in China with more tools than Drew.
Uh-huh.
At least they're making them.
Jay's just finishing up the exhaust springs with my custom spring puller. What do you think of that?
This is not a spring puller.
It works.
I don't give a fuck what it is.
So it's actually the spring puller that comes with your Yoshimura exhaust when you buy one for your Can-Am. I just put a wooden dowel on it with a hose clamp. It works.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Why?
This is not a tool. This is an abomination.
Hey, did the springs go on?
Don't start.
They're on. We got the header on. I just tightened up the bolts. This entire time, these guys have been here for about an hour and a half now. I've done 4 bolts in the hour and a half they've been here. That's not exaggerating. Well, no, you've done wiring harness. Mario's got the rear end almost rolling and the rear shocks mounted. I've done 4 bolts. Sandwiches, we got pizza. Oh, pizza's gone too. Boys, dinner's over. Let's get back to it. Mario's tightening up steering stem bracket off of the power steering unit. We got the trailing arms on, the rear shocks, the exhaust. It's getting there. A couple more odds and ends and it will be a roller. Still needs brakes and plumbing for coolant, airbox, a few other odds and ends, but we're getting there. It's day whatever. Can't remember. I think it's 4 or 5 of working on the Can-Am Renegade 1000. we're making good progress. I've had some help this week. A couple buddies stopped by. Thank you, Cody, Jason, and Mario for helping out. We still have some things left to do today to button up a rolling chassis. That's the number one goal. First thing up is get the front end finished up on this machine. I've got to do the upper A-arms. And once again, I want to tell everybody to be sure you Loctite all these important parts. You're putting your life on the line on these things. And I just so happen to have a bucket of bolts from Bibbins. When new machines are shipped to dealerships, they come with a lot of hardware that hold the cages to plastic pieces. And the hardware to remove the cage to button it onto the machine, side-by-sides particularly, don't get reused. So I grabbed one of those to help with this rebuild. So it's going to have all new nylon nuts, and everything will even get Loctited with those nylon nuts. Because, like I said, your life's on the line. And we going fast, son. Before I install the upper A-arm, I'm gonna help out the old bushings. Got a new tip from Can-Am. Part number, something, 9er, and 420. Here we go. Now you want these facing inward so that when you push the A-arm into the frame, that tab holds in place. However, you want to make sure you have it rotated so that when the suspension is traveling, it's not interfering with your zerk fitting. Meaning like this, if it was traveling upward, it would bend right into that zerk fitting. So we're going to put it on the top side and push it backwards into the frame.
Start it up.
After a little struggling, I finally got the front end buttoned up. The shocks are on, the upper A-arms are on, and the tie rods are on. So I'm going to move on to the braking system next and try to get that buttoned up. We are a roller again. That's the great news. The bad news is there's still a whole checklist of stuff to get done. Let's get it.
This is lit.
Another day in the shop. I got the puppies with me. We made real good progress yesterday. Here she is. It's a roller again. I've just got one lug nut holding the front wheels on there, just a mock-up because I still have a few finishing touches left to do. One of them being the front brake calipers have to go on. The front brake lines have to get hooked up and put in place. The front bumper has to get put back on, as well as the heat shield. And there's a few other odds and ends, plugs that have to just get buttoned up. But for the most part, controls are in place, steering's all set, front end's all set, rear end's all set, exhaust, etc. I never even pulled the clutch cover off, but we have a new belt sitting over on the shelf. So eventually, once everything gets buttoned up and running, we'll do maintenance to the clutch and service that and change out the belt as well. But real happy with the progress so far. It's taken quite a few man hours to get here, but it almost looks like a full four-wheeler again. Let's get started today. I finally finished buttoning up the front end. We got the radiator on, the front bumper on. Brakes are on and plumbed. We have not bled the system yet, but that will be done later. I could turn it easily into a roller right now just by putting the front wheels on, but in fact, I'm going to take the rear wheels back off. I've got a couple more things I want to finish up on the back. But it's break time. Supercross is on TV. It is Saturday, but I'm going to grab myself some lunch, chicken and rice, trying to eat healthy. It is race season coming up. I've got some painted parts drying right now, my number plates, my headlight blockout plates, and let's hope Tomac can get another win. All right, it's been a week now. We're Monday afternoon, and I think we're finally ready to start the quad. It's 2 weeks away from round one of the New York State Championship. Let's hope we can get everything buttoned up soon because I'd like to do some testing on this. It's got new suspension under it, new tires, new bracing, just all new everything. So I'd really like to put some time on the machine before I have to go race it against some of the best in the state. But let's take a look at what I've done. I got the brakes bled. As you can see, I spilled a little there. And I have been crossing off my checklist. This is always handy to do for yourself. The front sway bar, it's a B&R front sway bar. I need to put some thread cleaner on that one linkage there just to tighten that one down. Unfortunately, these B&R sway bars don't have greasable fittings. What I usually do before a race is I'll just squirt a little WD-40 in there. Helps keep it quiet more than anything else. Everything's gone together pretty well. I'm literally at the point where add front differential fluid, add engine oil, add transmission, and add rear differential oil, and then hook up the battery so we can run it on buds. Now, this is a program that not everybody's going to have access to. I'm very fortunate. I am sponsored by a dealership, a Can-Am dealership at that. And with that sponsorship comes perks like using the Buds program. What you have to do with that is I'm going to reset, obviously, my service reminders, but I'm also going to center out my steering because everything came apart. We just want to make sure that when you tell it to go left, it goes left. When you tell it to go right, it goes right and not into trees. Of course, it's going to be a lot of work just going over the machine 2, 3, 4 times. Make sure you hit every nut and bolt and she's tight and right. All the fluids I needed for my rebuild did come from an amazing dealership, Bibbins Sales and Service out of Weedsport, New York. Give them a call for all your service needs. It's going to take a lot of coolant to get this old girl cooled down. And we put nothing but the best for brake fluid in her already. I just got those bled. We're going to do some front differential work. The 140 goes in the rear and your transmission, used for both. I actually went with 0W40 here in New York State. It's going to get a little bit colder here, April and May. So I'll run this 0W40 for a few months. And then probably around June, we'll switch up to the 5W40 for the warmer temperatures. Thank you, Bibbins Sales and Service out of Weedsport, New York, for your sponsorship this season. I'm going to basically start from the front of the machine, moving my way backwards. So up first is our front differential. Takes the 75W90 weight oil, and we are going to add 500 milliliters to the front differential. Now I already have a funnel set up and my fill cap removed. All right, we got that filled up. Just gonna tighten down our filler cap, and then I'll move on to the engine. I did not pull out the oil filter yet from the engine, but I did drain the engine oil before I lifted it out of the chassis. One less thing to, or a little less weight, I should say, to lift. Those things are heavy enough as it is. I usually tighten that down to 1 UGA. If you go a full UGA Dugga, you could strip out your hole. Never go full UGA Dugga. Okay, moving on, we've got our 3/8 mils. We'll take that filter off real quick, and then we'll replace that, replace the O-ring in it. We'll replace the crush washer on the drain plug as well, and then refill with oil. Here we go. I just finished putting engine oil in the big 1000. Now it's time to take care of the transmission. Right there is our fill plug, and right below it, the copper one, is our drain plug. And I'm pretty sure I drained it a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, when I removed it from the frame. So I'm just gonna double check that. I'm gonna pull that drain plug, make sure all the old oil is out of there. And while that plug is off, we are going to replace the crush washer. The drain plug for this transmission is in a real tight spot behind your rear brake reservoir, and as you can see, the skid plate underneath it does not have a hole, so there's a good chance when you do pull this plug out, it's going to make a mess. And it looks like I did drain this already. There isn't much coming out, so we're going to let what is coming out drain while we remove the old crush washer. I'll just drop that down into our pan. And I've got a new one on standby right here. Dogs are resting peacefully. I'm about ready to fill the transmission up. The drain plug, or excuse me, the fill plug for this is the plastic one, like I mentioned. It does have a little rubber seal underneath. We don't need to necessarily replace that O-ring. It looks to be in good shape, so we're just going to reuse. This thing could easily get stripped out, so obviously don't torque it very hard when putting it back on. I've got my funnel set up just so I can pour. It's 400 milliliters of 75W140 oil, and I only use BRP products in my machine because I am sponsored by a dealership, and every little bit helps. 400. Feeding some more lifeblood back into the Can-Am 1000. I've already swapped out my spark plugs and lubed the chassis. We've got a new air filter installed already. Sucker's mint. Might see a little bit come out once you pull your tube out as everything levels off in there. No big deal. This fill plug is fairly easy to tighten on there with just your fingers, especially if you're not holding a camera. I get it finger tight, and then I go to my 15 mil and I give it half a dugga. Remember, never go full ugga dug them. There we go. That's a half a ugga, and that's according to spec. All right, you're up next, you little son of a bitch. It's got a fill plug around here somewhere. Pretty sure it's on this side. There you are. That's our fill plug right there. I'm gonna pull that sucker out and get done. Last oil going in this machine. Then we have to hook it up to buds. Try to get it started. We'll put a little bit of coolant in it. Once it gets started, we'll start to put more coolant in it until we can cycle it through the engine. All right, last up is the rear differential. 250 milliliters of the same oil you use in the transmission. 250. Already got my fill plug pulled and my handy dandy little funnel ready to go. Fluids are finally done. The machine is full of everything it needs to actually run and drive. Next up is to hook up the battery so that we can plug it into the Buds program, make sure everything turns on correctly, and then we will actually hit the hot button to see if she cranks over. Moment of truth. Let's see what happens when we actually hit the green button. She's on. She's alive. Dirt Chicken Racing.
This isn't the color it was supposed to be. Oh.
You want to say hi to YouTube?
Oh.
All right, I stopped over at Bivens to change out some plastic, and we got to do a front wheel bearing on the left side. I didn't change that yet. We're gonna do a couple other things. I've got a bracket on the front nose guard that has to be replaced. And just a couple other service things before we hook it up to Buds. All right, we've got the machine hooked up to the Buds program, and I need to center out my steering. So you go to your settings tab and you reset your torque offset. All you want to do is make sure your bars are centered when the machine's turned off, and you just reset the torque offset. And that's basically telling the computer that this is dead center for the steering, so that your DPS doesn't pull hard right or hard left. I'm gonna close that out. The other thing I do is just go up to summary and we reset our last service diagnostic. So we keep track of all that within Buds. On top of all that, if you ever wanted to change anything like your tire size, you could do that in Buds here. You can see that my DPS is enabled and working. We're gonna check for faults before we close out the program, make sure that everything is good and we don't have any. So looks like the machine is ready to ride. I got my nose piece off and I got to install this bracket. It holds the front fender to the front bumper, and I didn't run it for many years because it makes it more difficult to take the front fender off, but in return it rubbed on everything else. So it rubbed on my bumper and ate away the powder coating, and it actually rubbed on the radiator and wore into that a little bit. So I'm going to use the bracket this year. I've come up with a way, a little clip to make it a little bit easier. We'll just zip tie it in place so it doesn't fall out, but then you can just cut the zip tie and pull that clamp out to get the whole front fender off, plus your bolts, your normal bolts that would connect your fenders to your footwells and the bracket to the frame. All right, for a little mud protection, what I do is I use one of these blue air filters that you would find in your HVAC system for your home. Slide it in behind the brace to block off the front of the front fenders there behind the number plate. And we just zip tie it to the plastics to keep it in place, but it helps keep mud off of the radiator when it's installed. All right, I pulled out my front hub. We got to remove the snap ring and get the bearing pressed out. Snap ring has a lip on one side that lets you pry on it, and I don't think I can do it without two hands. Pull that snap ring up and out. Comes out just like so. Bring this over to the press. Say hi to Mario. Buenos noches. You know I don't speak your people's language. All right. So got it over here in the press. We're just gonna squeeze this sucker out. Before I press it out, something I've been doing for years and years with all my experience is just heat up the spindle a little bit before you press it out. All right, wheel bearings out. We're gonna go grab the new one from the freezer. Friendly tip from your service technician, make sure it's clean. I don't understand why. I think the dirt and rust would help hold it in place.
Does someone help you tie your shoes in the morning?
You don't have to tie Velcro.
I can tell.
I've got the quad back at my shop, back from Bibbin Sales and Service. I have to thank them for their support. And in front of me are my stickers from 725 Designs. Big shout out to Todd Swain for these. I don't have the money for a full kit, so I asked Todd to just do some simple logos, list of sponsors here for me, as well as big number plates for front and rear, some minis to hand out to friends and family, a couple more throughout the quad, probably rear fenders for these smaller, mid-sized ones. So thank you, Todd, for all these. I couldn't afford a full graphics kit because I am at $3,200, just over my budget of $3,000 for this rebuild. It's a 2017. I wanted it fresh for the 2022 race season, so I did essentials. I'm gonna run plain classics for a little bit. Later in the season, I'll work with Todd at 725 Designs and come up with a graphics kit for the machine, but for now, we're gonna leave it plain Jane. The $3,200 spent on this project is spanned across many different vendors and sponsors. I'm not going to disclose how much I spent with each vendor or company out of respect for them, the discount they gave me on sponsorship, or even the service they provided for me. So that was the grand total build, and it was a hard hit to the wallet, but well worth it because the entire quad has brand new bushings, bearings, some new plastics, new powder coating, but more importantly, the reason we went down to the frame was to brace it. Thank you again, Mario, MR Unlimited, for welding in that brace kit from B&R, and thank you Off-Road ER for selling it to me. So we've got the thing finished. The last step is just put on the stickers. I'm not even gonna show you that process. It's boring. But what I am gonna show you, the finished product. Thanks for watching all of this. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Here's the finished product.